right, today we're going to be talking about one of our short reading passages, A Field Trip Back in Time. The main focus of this lesson using a field trip back in time is going to be talking about the idea of context clues. Context clues are clues to help us figure out the meaning of a word. There's a couple of things that we use for context clues. When looking for the meaning of a word using context clues, we always start with, before we can use context clues, it's very helpful to think about what is our experience? What is my experience with the word that I'm trying to define? Have I heard it before, seen it before, read it before? Have I watched a movie where I was able to hear it and see somebody speak it at the same time? So use your experience with the word itself. Okay, that can help you to build a foundation for possibly what the meaning of this word could be. You also want to think about the word itself. Okay, can you say the word? Sound the word out. And when you sound the word out, you can start to break apart the word into other words that you might know. So after sounding the word out, okay, you can break the word up into syllables. Okay. Another thing that we do when looking for context clues, thinking about context clues to help us understand the meaning of a word or create our own meaning of a word, which makes the word more meaningful when you're able to create an accurate definition for yourself. We can also take a look at the affixes of the word. Okay, so that's your prefixes and suffixes. Okay, your word beginnings and your suffixes are your word endings. Okay, so your affixes, okay, are both of these. Right. So those are 4 things that we can do before we've even tapped into looking at the sentences, right? And so when you're looking for context clues, you're going to use the sentences surrounding the word that you're trying to define for yourself. Okay. We have 5 words in our passage today. We have the word replica. Replica. We have the word fascinated. Not fascinated. Fascinated. We have resources. We have scolded. And we have our last word, transported. We're going to take a look at 3 of these words. We're going to look at the words fascinated, resources, and scolded. The last 2 are the 2 remaining words that you have. You'll define them, create your own definition on your own. For my class, this is a good opportunity to think about your 3-column notes. What would we do in class with these words? Of course, we want to create our own definition first, and then we go to dictionary.com, and then we find out the actual definition. For our word work here, we are leaving out the create a sentence and draw a picture of each one of those words. So for our class, we already have this as a routine. We do this weekly. We do it daily in the classroom. And so the first word I want to look at is fascinated. So thinking about the word fascinated, we can use our experience, sound the word out we did, break the word up into syllables. So we have fascinated, fascinated. Break the word, we have prefixes and suffixes. We have the ed, right? So fascinated, that is a suffix added to the end of this word. Now, if we took that off, what do we have? We have fascinate. And from there, we can start to think about, ooh, fascinated, fascinate. I think I've heard this word before. I have some experience with this word. Fascinated, to fascinate. I was fascinated by Mr. Tillish's amazing lesson on context clues. And then we can start to use the sentences surrounding the word itself. So I'm looking, as I'm reading, I'm already underlining context clues as I read out loud. So make sure that before you even are proceeding with this lesson, you've already read this passage out loud 3 to 4 times easily, more than that if you need, more than that. I'm going to inspire you to read it 5 times. I am taking a look here. I have the sentence, I'm fascinated by the pioneer days. Excuse me. I'm fascinated by the pioneer days. I often imagine how different life must have been so long ago. I often imagine, right? So I'm fascinated by the pioneers' days, and because of that, I often imagine, right? If I'm often imagining how if I'm often imagining something about a topic, in this case, pioneer days, I'm probably fascinated by it. So if I'm fascinated by it, it captures my attention, okay? My fascination. I therefore think if I am to be fascinated, I'm fascinated. That goes back to adjectives. We're describing this person, right? The pronoun I fascinated. If you're fascinated by something and you're imagining things about this topic, pioneer days, okay, you really enjoy something. Intrigued. Okay. I really enjoy something. You're fascinated by it. You really enjoy it. You like to study it, read about it, write about it. The next word we're going to look at is resources. In looking at, back to fascinating, I often imagine would be that context clue. After I've used my experiences, I've sounded it out, I've broken the word up into syllables, I've looked for prefixes and suffixes, okay? It starts to uncover the clues of what a word means, all right? So resources. I have the sentence, going inside, we got to see just how few resources were available to treat the sick. So in that sentence alone, I have how few resources treating the sick, resources. Okay, so I'm sounding the word out, resources. I'm breaking the syllable up, or the word up into syllables. So I have and sources, right? So the word re, or the prefix re, means again, redo, reschedule, resources. And then we have sources. My experience with the word sources. My teachers tell me to use sources to help me with my writing. Places that you can go to get something, to get information. And so if we're looking at this word in terms of its sentence that it's in, we got few resources. We have few places that we can go to treat the sick, or we have few things to use to treat the sick. So I've come up with a definition just by breaking the word up into syllables and taking a look at its prefixes and suffixes. Re and sources. Resources, 3 syllables, one of them being the prefix re, or to reschedule, to redo, to reimagine, or use resources. These sources are things that have been used for something else, but now we get to use them again. So whatever the things are that are helping to treat the sick, they are sources that have been used before for something else, but we get to use them again, right, to help treat the sick. And there were very few of them. Resources. The things we use, to help us. Okay? Things we use to help us. Resources. Some of them are renewable, some of them are non-renewable. Things like the wind and the sun and water, they're going to be there for us, right? Within our lifetime. We're going to wake up every day. We're going to have water, we're going to have sun, we're going to have wind, and those are resources that we can use over and over and over again. And then we have our non-renewable resources. Those are our fossil fuels, or those fuels that we have deep, deep down in the earth that took millions and millions and millions of years to make, millions and millions of years of dirt crushing dead things and smashing and pulverizing it in a way that it eventually turned to a crude oil, which is where we are fueling many of our industries and our vehicles. Okay. Then the last word that we are going to look at together here is scolded. So scolded. Use your experience, right? Find the word. Use your experiences. What experiences do you have with scolded? Scolded. Scalding hot water is something that comes to my mind. I've sounded the word out. Break the word up into syllables. I have scold and did. Scolded. So I have scold. I do think about prefixes and suffixes, ed, being the suffix again, but I've also heard that word scalding hot water. So the suffix ing or ing is also an option for me to add in there to maybe trigger my memory of how I've used this word before. Scolded, scolding, to scold. I was scolded. I was burned by scalding hot water when trying to pour out the boiling water for my pasta. I have experience with this word. Now, let's read the sentence, right? Use the sentence. I'm sorry about this little symbol. Kids, you're used to that little symbol being in the way. I am going to use the sentence that has the word in it. She scolded us for walking too slow and snapped her stick on the desk. I underlined the context clue of snapped her stick on the desk. Scolded us for walking too slow. From walking too slow, well, I have experience with that. You know, when my kids are walking too slow, I'm telling them to hurry up, right? But I may not scold them for it, but I'm going to use a little bit of my dad voice to tell them to hurry up. If I'm snapping sticks on someone's desk, I probably wouldn't be a teacher for very much longer. But in the 1800s, snapping sticks on desks was no thing. I mean, that was the best case scenario if you did something that was irritating or frustrating to the teacher. So snapped her stick on the desk. This lady's frustrated. You know, she don't like walking slow, and she's snapping sticks on desk. She never smiled, right? I already have the image in my head of who this teacher is. The sentence prior to the word says, we went to the school next, which was really just one classroom with one teacher. The teacher was dressed as if it were the year was 1812. Okay. I'm also looking at, so it's old school, 1812. The sentence after, we have, she never smiled as she ordered us to sit down and be quiet, right? Sitting down, be quiet, ordering us, snapping sticks, walking too slow, never smiled, to scold, right? To scold. I already got this negative idea of what this word means. All right, for the next 30 minutes, she taught us a very boring math lesson. We were also scared of her. So to be scared of her, ordering these kids, never smiling, snapping sticks, walking too low, tons of context clues for this word scolded here. It's something negative, right? So kids, first thing could be to your experience. I'm saying this to you in the classroom is, if you do something frustrating and irritating and you're not learning from your mistakes, Mr. Tosh is probably going to use a little bit of his dad voice. And so for some of you, to scold is to use your mom or to use your dad voice. It could be to yell. It could be to speak grumpily. It could be to speak in a mean way. Right? Very clear, to speak meanly or in a mean way, meanly being the adverb describing how we are speaking. Adverbs describe verbs, adjectives describe, or as we learned in our adjective lesson, indicate nouns, describe or indicate nouns, whereas a word like meanly ending in ly is an adverb describing how we speak. So, context clues, right? Jot down these little notes right here. You got to use a little bit of your experience. Think about it. Sound that word out. Then you can start to use your experience. Break the word up into syllables once you've sounded the word out. Locate those prefixes and suffixes. Can you add a different prefix or suffix to the word to change it a little bit that might help jog your memory for what experiences you actually do have with those words? And then you have used the sentences surrounding the word, and obviously use the sentence that contains the word itself. All right. So other than my paper bouncing around and being in the screen sometimes and not, I think overall this will be a good starting point for us to continue developing our context clues as a strategy to use. Okay, field trip back in time. Focus is context clues. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.